Welcome back to the Conversations on Culture Coaching Podcast. Today we have episode 3 for you. Going to be thrilled to introduce Coach Sundance Wicks, assistant men's basketball coach at the University of Wyoming. He is a fantastic Twitter follow at Coach Sundance. If you haven't, he previously was the head coach at Missouri Western, which is a Division II school, and he turned that school around by building culture over the past 2 years. He's pretty famous for his tagline, "Bring Your Own Juice," which for the mental skills coaches and sports psychologists out there, we could spend a whole off season working on how to develop juice or what juice is. So that's a pretty good tagline. He's going to allude to the fact that he studied sports psychology as an undergraduate student, but more than that, he's a great human being, has a great story, and it's fantastic. And I am privileged and honored to be able to interview him today for this podcast. And we'll talk more about the sports psych aspect of it when he finishes up. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Yo.
Coach, how you doing?
I don't know why every time. So this has happened the last 2 times. Let me see here, start video. Oh, there we go. I was like, geez. The last 2 times I've done this, like my video, this hasn't worked, so I'm just glad it's working now. What's going on, Mr. Ritter? You good, brother?
I am. How are you?
Man, you've got my wheels turning on this stuff because your questions are really good, man. They provide a lot of depth to really, really understanding something that is elusive, I think, for the most part, for a lot of people. I'm pumped that you're doing this for a project because I did my master's thesis on flow in sports, which at the time, there's like one book that's like Csikszentmihalyi is the only guy who's written anything about it. And he's like, there's 9 psychological components to obtaining flow, and you got it. You have to all have to align, and there's four disrupting factors of it. And it's like, the whole point is trying to be present in everything that you're doing. It's like the same thing with culture, right? It's like you have to be present every day in your culture or else it doesn't happen.
That's it. And I think I appreciate you coming on because I think you have such a fascinating background, a fascinating story. I think what you did at, Missouri Western is fantastic. So it's great. I'm excited to hear about what you got going on and what, how you see it like permeating into the rest of your life. I mean, you are just a authentic, genuine, energetic guy. So I'm excited to talk to you. I'm excited to spend some time with you, and I appreciate it.
Well, this
go
is
ahead
good
and start. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I guess there's been a lot of things that have been on my mind since we talked, and what I love about culture is that it's unique to every individual. Like we all have our own individual daily culture or family culture, right? So as a person, you have a way that you live, which basically is like your habits that you've created, right? I always say culture creation is habit formation.
Yep.
And so you form your own personal habits on how you live and how you go about things. But then you could go into the other areas of your life where you get to a program and you're part of a team, and now you have a team culture, right? And your family culture might be different than your team culture. You're different than your individual culture. And I think all of this comes down to creating an authentic approach in what you're doing, right? And you just hit on that word, like how do we do things that, because I think there's a lot of copycats out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people who want to copycat a culture and say, well, this is the way the Spurs do it, so I'm going to implement this because that's what they're the best of the best, and I want my culture to be like the Spurs. Well, at the end of the day, it's not you, right?
Yeah.
And one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got in coaching was from Coach Meyer, and he always said, you got to be who you are.
Yeah.
He always said there was this quote in a bathroom wall in Lebanon, in a restroom in Lebanon, Tennessee. And he says, "Be what you is, because if you is what you ain't what you is." And it's a great bathroom wall quote. But at the end of the day, that's what you have. Your culture has to replicate who you are. And for me, what's cool is I was a head coach for 2 years. And now I get to work for Coach Leonard here at University of Wyoming, and I get to dive into his way of culture.
Yeah.
Because when people ask, like, where does culture, start and stop? It starts and stops with your leadership.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, and I've always said this, and this can ring true in coaching, but the biggest believer in your program is the biggest culture creator. So if you work for a guy, or if you are a coach, or if you have a player that believes in bigger things and bigger dreams than you, then that locker room will be created by the biggest dreamer, by the biggest believer. And your culture will be created by the biggest dreamer and biggest believer. And so you may just believe half-heartedly in something because maybe it's something, like I said, you copycatted or stole or tried to mimic, but you don't really believe it. You know, players nowadays, they could spot a phony a mile away. You can't trick kids, Eric. You can't trick kids anymore. And I think that's kind of where the old guard of culture is like, you just got to do what I want you to do. And then you don't explain why, and you don't help them understand it. And this is one of the biggest things that I think with culture is the two terms agree versus understand.
Mm-hmm.
The old way of culture used to be, you better just agree with me. I played for coaches when I was growing up that, you know, why did we do this? Doesn't matter why we did it. Just, I said we're doing this, so we're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, like, you get fact checked so much that you have to be able, more so than ever, to explain your why so players can understand. So coaches in your program can understand, because that's powerful. To be able to understand something, to understand the why is powerful. And agreeing with something doesn't make it right. I will say this: disagreement is healthy, but we live in a society today, and this is just getting more onto the micro topic of what's happening right now, that if you disagree with somebody today, they'll unfriend you on Facebook or Instagram or any of the social media accounts. They may never call you again. If your political views don't align, or if you're, you know, whatever you are advocating for doesn't align with what they want or what they like, then we just can't be friends. So we can't disagree with anybody anymore because everyone's so damn sensitive.
Yeah.
And that's getting off topic a little bit, but that's the whole point of cultures. You don't have to agree with I didn't agree with everything Coach Meyer did in our program.
Yeah.
For us and with us. But he made sure that we understood why we were doing what we were doing. And that is such a massive part. And I guess, you know, starting with this is kind of brief segue into all this stuff, but I kind of want to lead off with one real simple concept here, because when people ask what culture is and how do you get it going, and, you know, all this crap about, you know, the buzzword, and we talk about it, but I want to dispel a couple of myths, because there's the culture apologists and there's the people that just absolutely despise the word culture.
Yeah.
And I could kind of see both sides of it all.
For sure.
And so I've heard people say this phrase a lot, and this will be a good one to start with. Culture is not something you put on a wall. Okay. So I go, all right, I understand that. But to this point, what is culture to me? Culture to me is the process of repeated and reinforced actions of excellence. Repeated and reinforced actions of excellence. Because when we're trying to create a culture, we're not trying to create a culture of apathy or learned helplessness or failure. We're trying to create a culture of repeated and reinforced actions of excellence. We want to be great. We want our culture to be great. But the actions is the key word here. So why wouldn't we reinforce what we want in our program? Why wouldn't we want to reinforce what we think, say, and do in every possible way? Because culture, at the end of the day, the essence is what you think, what you say, and what you do. What you think in your mind, what you say to your players, your program, the people around it, the assistant coaches, and what you do, your actions over and over again, is what creates culture at its core. Yeah. So why wouldn't we want to reinforce, Eric, what we think, say, and do every possible place we could, which would be on home?
That's it. I mean, you're hitting it. I mean, those are the things, and that's why we're chatting, because I think it's so embedded in the way you grew up, your experiences, what you lived through, what you did, that I love watching you live it out. Even from your Twitter profile picture, man, you're screaming, you got your mask on. Dude, that gives me goosebumps, man. I'm telling you. Like, I'm the guy who grew up in Minnesota, was told by college coach that I was too emotional, but I love the game. I love the play. I love the way it works. And now getting into the coaching side of it, culture is an elusive white deer, man. You see it once every couple of years. It just is what it is. And even the best programs, from year to year, their culture varies. It's just the way it is. So we're hoping that, you know, you can peel back the veil for us a little bit, but you're saying so many things right now. I just realized when you were talking, I didn't have my notebook. I'm taking notes on Word. Like, I usually have my notebook out, but you're right. culture apologists and people who believe in culture and people that don't. And dude, it is such a buzzword. And that's why I'm doing this. I want guys like you. I got a coach from Minneapolis, Coach McKenzie from Minneapolis North talking. He gave a great talk about what he does for inner city kids. I had a female coach from California talk. So I want to get people's perspective on what they think it is so that we can compile this list of things, this like group of coaches talking about it, so that for people that are searching for it, they can do it. And then for mental conditioning specialists like me, you know, they can help teams build that. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of old guard coaches still coaching who don't have a clue how to do it. They need the young guys like you. They need guys who are going to be energetic and fired up. But you said something I want to touch on, because there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this. What'd you say? You said the person who's most excited about it is going to have the best, is going to create your culture. Listen, it could be a kid who's pissed off at your program, creating your culture. It happens. I've seen it. I've watched 2 or 3 kids tear a program apart because of that, and they tear the team apart. So just understanding, like, I'm on track with everything you're saying, and I love it. So just, keep going with what you got.
Well, to that point, there's 2 jokers in every deck room. And so what we talk about, and that's why there's culture coaches. We had a guy at Missouri Western come in and talk to us who I love. His name is Kevin DeShazo.
And I know. Yep. Or I don't know him. I've heard of him.
Kevin is awesome, and he's awesome. But he has studied this a lot and studied the habit formation of successful groups and leaders. Mm-hmm. And you talk about 2 jokers in every deck, and I'll put it in, for our locker room last year at Missouri Western, there's 17 players. They say 12% can ruin your culture. That's 2 guys out of 17.
Yeah.
So 2 powerful voices that aren't crusading for you, that aren't, I call them culture crusaders, that aren't guys that will just basically just Joan of Arc it, you know, for you to have success or have a chance in your program. You got to have culture crusaders, but you can also have those guys, man, who are destroying the mission.
Yeah.
And that's why for us at college, man, we're very lucky that we get to identify and explore the minds of the young men or women that we're recruiting. And so at the end of the day, if the locker room is bad, it's because we ruined it. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's it. There's no other excuse. You can't sit there and say, oh, I just didn't know about this. Well, you didn't do your job. Yeah. Right. And so for us, like getting to that mental mapping part of it, of what is the kid what's the voice going to be in the locker room, because we can't police that.
And it's funny you're saying that, because that's something that, you know, I coached, 4 years at high school. I coached a couple of years in college, and the tough thing is when the cupboards are dry, the cupboards are dry sometimes. You miss a recruiting class in college, and then you have a couple dudes leave or quit because they maybe don't want to play basketball at the D3 level. It's over. Like, you are dry for a couple of years. And then when I asked the head coach, I said, hey, you should cut this dude, and he's a player. Now we have some concepts, like, are we going to compromise because we want to maybe get a few more wins, or are we going to scrape it out and clean out the cupboard? And that's what Coach McKenzie said. He goes, I took over at Minneapolis North. The school was about to close. He goes, 13 out of 15 players had below a 2.0 GPA. He goes, I got rid of them all. He goes, I got rid of them all. But he goes, Eric, you got to understand, I've been in Minneapolis for 20 years. So he goes, I had kids that wanted to come play for me just because I was back in Minneapolis. So he said, I'm fortunate. Minneapolis open enrollment. Kids in my mentorship program at my church can now come play with me. So his big concept was clean it out, start over. And if you build it the right way and take ownership over that, it's going to be okay. I mean, you may not win all the time, but he said, fortunately, we had some talent. So I'm down with you. And in college, it is that way. And I think when we have dry seasons, we have to understand, what did we do? And it's hard for a head coach. It's easy as the assistant. You're the assistant now. You're back in that left seat, right? It's easy for us to look at it and go, hey, coach, and sit in his office and be like, coach, so, we're not doing this great. But when you're the head coach, it's really hard to look introvertly to, like, say, did I mess this up tonight? Because we beat ourselves up all the time over it. So you're 100% with that. And I love that you said it. We get the choice, right? If I bring in the wrong kids, it's my fault.
Well, that's why I believe high school culture is it's so important to establish consistency, because a culture in a high school. If you have I played for a guy named Mike Curry. He's the all-time winningest coach in Wyoming high school basketball history. And you just knew what you were going to get. You watched that program. I watched that program. I was in the gym too, rebounding for Camels, when I was in 7th grade, just getting them ready to go, watching guys like Rory Williams and Brad Enzi and all these guys just, come to play and go to basketball camp. You went to the Mike Curry basketball camp for the Camels every summer. And just, you knew what the expectations were. You knew what open gyms were going to be like. You knew that you were going to get there. And if you didn't get there early enough, you probably weren't going to get on the floor because there's going to be a lot of kids trying to vie for the eye of the coaches. And every morning when we did open gym, the coaches would play Roger Larson, Tor Gunderson, Jim Hinshaw, Mike Curry. They were going to play. They played with us. And so it's at the end of the day, like their culture was established. That's why I say it's hard for high school coaches, because if you don't have something ingrained or they haven't already started that creation process, you're playing 5-card stud, man.
I think you're right there. I think you hit it on the head. And this is something that we don't talk about enough in basketball coaching in general. At the high school level, you're getting 3-4 years to make something happen. And the truth is, and I'll say this, it's going to be unfavorable to a lot of people. Parents are hard to deal with, and people quit.
That's not unfavorable. That's the truth.
I know, but people quit because of that. A lot of times, I know a lot of good coaches who want to do it can't sustain through that. So when you're talking about it, yeah, I think honestly, I almost think this, and I'm a culture guy. I love it. I think it's elusive, but I almost think at the high school level, just develop the players and get them going, and be a great, genuine person. When you're trying to put things on the locker room, you're trying to change things. I get it. I'm down. But the effort that goes into that is so extreme. And you may not stay more than a couple of years. So developing guys, getting them ready.
Well, I wanted to hit on a point that you said about, every year if you go back and watch, every year there's a team that we're going to study, right? Because all of a sudden maybe they're winning a championship. They're winning at a high level. They came out of nowhere. The Spurs have always had, what was regarded by most as a great culture. Yep. Texas Tech made this run, and everybody's –
That's it. That's who I thought of when you said it, yeah.
Texas Tech's everybody's intrigued by, Coach Beard's philosophy and how they're running their things, and they have inside access to the locker room. And I think a lot of that spurs from if you do want people to get behind the curtain and see what you're doing, you got to let them in. And like you said, it can't be as elusive, but knowing that when we see that, you can't be Chris Beard, right? You just want to watch how they reinforce their actions.
Yep.
And I've always likened this to kind of like a mad scientist approach, right?
Yeah.
Is that every year culture is basically, it's a chemistry experiment where you're trying to lead your players in your program to a deeper connection and understanding of why you're doing what you're doing. It's just a chemistry experiment. And the 3 C's it goes culture, it goes chemistry, and then it goes connection. And so if we talk about culture is what you think, say, and do, right? Then what we have to do is we have to create basically experiments every year to try to bond our team. And I say, and Coach Meyer always said, it's one of the greatest ways to bond a team. And it's not some sort of weird thing. It's shared suffering. When I go back and talk to my former teammates and players, we never talk about the easy times or the fun times. We talk about the things that were hard because that connected us to a deeper level.
It's crazy, isn't it? That is crazy. Right there, what you just said, I'm on page with you. And I don't mean to keep cutting you off. I just want to make sure we're getting a chance to talk back and forth about it. I was a military guy. I served in the military. Shared suffering is a real thing. If you've never suffered with your teammates, are you really connected to them? That's my honest question. Are you? If you go through something and you don't go through the suffering, I'm not talking about losing. Losing is not suffering. Listen, losing sucks, but that is not as bad as that one practice you have every year where Coach Meyer was going to put you on the line for 2 hours, or he's going to sit you on the wall. He used to make you guys shoot and get your form on the side of the backboard. I know it because I came and visited campus. I just wasn't bought into it. I said, this is too controlling for me. And I was young. And now I look back, I kick myself. But I'll tell you, shared suffering is real. And people, like you said, we share the stories of the hard times, not the good times. And that's crazy. But it's a real psychological thing. I'm on board with you.
Well, when you talk about trying to create it, right? Like you create those moments for your team to be able to connect with each other. And that's why the whole point of the agree versus understand is important. Is Coach Meyer did some things that we didn't agree with, but we understood why he did it. And as we were going through it, you know, we got a deeper understanding of the why, a deeper believe in, because I don't believe in buy-in personally. And there's another phrase that you talk about all the time where people say, oh, you got to buy into it. Well, buy-in to me is like the stock market. I can buy into this to a stock. I can also sell out of a stock if it's not going well.
Yeah.
When you believe in something, you believe in it with your entire being. You believe at your core that what you're doing has meaning, has purpose. You understand the why. You believe in it. And while you start out, a lot of us start out, we talk about resistance to culture. While we always start out resisting a little bit is because we don't quite know what we're getting into. But I will say this, if someone is very good at teaching the why and explaining it to you, and you can form a deeper level of understanding and a deeper connection to the why, now you have purpose. And for us, it's all about generating massive levels of purpose so that we can exceed and overachieve everything that people thought we were supposed to be. And it's why you always see teams overachieve, that you're like, man, I can't believe this team is that good. Or why you see teams underachieve. They're super talented and they got a bunch of losers.
Yeah.
And the Jeff Linder story, if you've watched Jeff come through the coaching ranks, all of his teams, he always says, we're 0-100 in airports. We're 0-100 in warm-ups. We've never won a warm-up and we've never won the airport race. Because when you walk through an airport, you don't see our guys and go, wow, are you guys soccer players or what are you? You know, but they've overachieved because of the purpose and the process. And he has been a guy who's, you'll never see this, and this goes back to both sides. You'll never see his culture on a wall because he is so much about the actions of what we do and the process of becoming great, that it doesn't matter what you read or what you see, because you're going to do it every single day. And having been in this program now for a couple months, we do a lot.
Yeah.
We talk about coaches' culture and players' culture. It's not like we just go to the practice floor, put our players through a really solid practice, and then we never talk to. I'm going to have 4 film sessions today with 4 guards, and we do it every single day. Yep. Every single day, we're going to sit down and break film because we're going to watch more film than opponent. We're going to do that. We're going to give you an edge there. We are going to go on the floor, and we are not going to waste any time out there. It is going to be, our pace of practice is as fast a pace as I've ever seen. Now, Coach Meyer was opposite. He was going to blow his whistle every 30 seconds, and then he was probably going to give you a 5-minute soliloquy and go off on a tangent, and then you're going to get cold, and you're going to get back into a drill, and you're supposed to do it at 100% intensity, and you're going to be already ice cold because of it. He was going to give you some sort of sidebar story every time he talked. Yeah. I have a lot of that in me as well when it comes to coaching because you're just around that stuff.
Yeah.
But the do part of it again, once again, you know, and people say, well, what's your culture? What's your culture? Okay, this is what we gave our guys at the start of the year. We gave our guys 3 segments of numbers: 365, 150, and 24. And so if you want to know about Jeff Linder's culture, he's going to start with 365, 150, and 24. And to me, what I've said is that equals 1 day at a time. 365 days a year, 1 day at a time. 150 is the amount of possessions on average that you get in a game, which is 75 offense, 75 defense, 1 possession at a time. And 24 hours in a day, 1 hour at a time. We are a culture that is focused on the process of being present in everything we do, which is why we're very productive. It's why coaches under Coach Linder get massively better. It's why players under Coach Linder in this program get massively better, because we are so process and present oriented. We are trying to win the one possession, win the 1 day, win the 1 hour, win the 1 rep, win the 1 weight room workout, win the classroom, win the homework assignment, win the 1. So we just talk about win the 1 all the time. And if you can get players to start seeing things for the moment they're in versus you take a lot of fear of the present and worrying about the present or worrying about the future out of it by staying focused on the process and in the present, very task mastery. So it's essentially simple and brilliant at the same time, because I believe that simplicity is complicated.
It is super. And, you know, the funny thing, I thought of a couple things while you were talking there. And I'm going to start with the latter because you just finished it. That's it, man. Staying present, being in the moment. I know a guy named Graham Betchert, works with NBA guys, is a sports psych guy, works with Aaron Gordon. share a story. You know, Aaron Gordon probably won't do another dunk contest. We're just going to leave it at that. But his concept is called play present. And it's about freeing up your athletes to play as hard as they can right now without worry of the consequence. And he thinks that if you can do that, his whole entire mental skills program is based on that. If you can stay in the present moment, that it's a wrap, that you will be more successful. Because like you said, you're giving me sports psych gold, man. I mean, and I can tell you have a background. It's the fact that you're not focused on the future. You're not focused on yesterday. You're focused on one rep, winning one. And I think it's awesome that, you know, you can pull that out of Coach Linder's stuff because he hates the word philosophy. I don't want to say that, but maybe he doesn't like the word doesn't like the word culture. So you are able to decipher what he's doing and translate it into your own words. Yes. Because you are a culture galvanist. You love culture. You are all about it. So I love that even though you work for a guy who doesn't want to talk about it, you're still able to be completely about it and find ways to do it. And the fun thing is watching you transition from a head coach where, you know, you're doing stuff that I'm going to be honest, man, like people out there who are putting their culture out there a lot, you can tell when it's fake and you can tell when it's real. Yours was as genuine as it comes. And I've had a wonderful time. Like, serious, I'm not a guy who used the word wonderful. I had a wonderful time following your program over the last 2 years from Twitter. And that's the truth, because I love seeing what you're doing. It's authentic, it's genuine, and it's real. And that permeates. So to watch you transition to being an assistant, where even our conversation 2 weeks ago, you said, well, Coach Linder's the opposite. He hates the word culture. But you're able to sit in front of me and talk about his culture, even though he hates it.
Because at the end of the day, he's not going to sit here and beat his gums about the word. He's going to sit out there. He's going to get in his office and do. He's going to get on the court and do. Yep. He's going to get with players on film and do.
Yeah.
And that is so. It is a doing culture, man. And like that's a big part of it. Some people just have word cultures. Some people just have signage cultures, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, the biggest part of all this is the repeated and reinforced actions of excellence. I can't stress that enough, because that is going to lead and what we want. Okay, so we talk about culture on a yearly basis where some people are trying to do the chemistry experiment and figure out what they got. But at the end of the day, what we want is tradition to never graduate. That's the last thing. You want to win forever, right? So you want to win forever. How do you do that? You create something that lasts by a deeper understanding and connection of the why. So players that when they leave here, they know that when they come back and watch, if a Northern Colorado player came up here and watched Jeff Linder run practice, they would sit on the sideline, laugh, and just go, yep, did all this, because you know what you did? The same thing there. That's where tradition never graduates. And we want that to reinforce our habits over a long period of time. So now when you really talk about the word, you start to see it year after year. And that is the end. At the end of the day, it's a true test of time, right? Yeah. Culture is the test of time will tell you whether or not you have something that lasts.
Yeah. And I think you're right, man. I mean, you're hitting it on the head again. Like, dude, it's fantastic to hear you say it. The funny part is, like, if it's not in your core, if what you're trying to do with your team is not in you, it's going to be impossible, because there's 1,000 coaches out there who want to have a great culture. I think every coach wants to have a great culture. They desire for it. It's the word that comes up all the time. It just does. Now, if it's not in your,
we probably said it 40 times already.
That's what I mean. But that's what we're talking about. This is conversation on culture. So I appreciate you getting into it. And we've gone way off script. I'm cool with it. Let's just keep rolling. But if it's not in your core, it's not going to be sustainable. And it may be great wordplay. If it's not inside of you, you can make up words. We can make up a culture. We can sit down and game plan with a group of coaches. I've done it, where we develop a great sounding culture. If it's not in your core, it's going to be a wrap, and it won't carry. And it's got to be in the core of your assistants. It's got to be in your actions. You keep saying daily habits. It's hitting me. It's crazy. Like, we might be kindred spirits. I mean, this is what I'm doing with college programs and high school programs right now. For the other part of my project, I'm teaching them mental skill stuff for free. So we're talking about habits. We're talking about goals. We're talking about focus and attention. We're talking about staying present. You know what I mean? Everything you've said today is the same stuff that I'm doing with college athletes, high school athletes. So it's got to be in you if you want to be successful. And I think that's awesome that you can see your coach is a doer. So for people out there who may watch this, because you have a significant following, if you share this thing, the link for this, people are going to watch it. So understand that I'm glad you're hitting on both sides of it. There's going to be coaches who watch this who are like, oh, I'm not really a culture guy, but I am a doer.
Yeah.
So seeing themselves somewhere as well is important for coaches. Like, know that there's different ways to build the culture. Acting it out. Actions are just as good as that wordplay, right? And if the wordplay is not in your heart, if it's not in you, it's going to be a wrap.
Well, that's why I think Jeff's brilliant, is in the sense of, look, I was going to let everybody behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz curtain at Mo West by having cameras in our locker room. I'm going to tweet a lot. I'm probably going to I'm going to inundate you with all sorts of information that you may like or hate. I mean, be polarizing at the end of the day. I always say be polarizing in one of two ways: be on this end or be on this end, but don't be in the middle, because you're just not going to inspire anybody. And what's brilliant about it is, that's why I love Jeff's overachieving teams all the time, is because his culture is prevalent, and we're not going to talk about it because no one's going to believe us if we talk about it. Mm-hmm. We're just going to show you. We're going to go out there and we're going to kick ass and we're going to show you. And then that is just as good as watching Texas Tech in a locker room, listen to Old Town Road, after a big win. It's just as important, because both equate to high levels of success. Mm-hmm. And so that's where you just have to be authentic in your approach, right? And the one thing I love about Jeff is that he'll say this all the time. Culture, developing a program is never a layup. Because you're going to sit there and say, like, hey, we have it now. Yeah. One of your questions, when you got it. And I'm like, you just got to believe that you never have it. You have to fight for it every day. Yeah. And there's too many variables as coaches right now where you have, 13 to 17 players in your locker room. You have 4 coaches, you got managers. Something's going to go haywire every single day. And you just got, his favorite phrase is, the great ones adjust. Mm-hmm. And so you're always going to be adjusting and adapting what you're doing on a daily basis to what the circumstances are. But that doesn't mean you're never going to lose sight of your core, your true north, your kind of your cultural compass, so to speak. You're always going to be pointed in the right direction, but you're going to have to adjust and you're going to have to adapt to the things that come up in your program. And that's why you asked, what's one piece of advice you'd give a coach who wanted to create a culture? And I would say, you better be willing to fight every freaking day. Mm-hmm. You better be willing to fight for the highest good of your program every single day. And that highest good sometimes is going to mean that you're going to have to lose a player that's really talented because they don't believe in the good that you believe in. Because once again, culture is created by the biggest believer. Yep. And their belief is opposite direction of yours, and they have a very powerful presence, then whatever you're trying to do is just going to be negated and destroyed by that. And it's hard. I had to do that in my first year at Mo West, is make a decision that was for the program. Coach Meyer's greatest phrase is, if there's ever a decision between you and the program always wins. The individual never outweighs the higher good of the program. Yeah.
Now let me ask.
Go ahead.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, you get a player that can help your program win. I mean, you got a guy that can help you win. He can help you win games. You need him. Maybe you need him to have a successful year, or to have what you would consider a more successful year. But the guy's going the opposite direction as you sometimes. So he causes rifts with your team. What do? Do you get rid of the guy? I mean, I firmly believe you if you can't connect with him and you've tried to connect with the guy, I think he's got to go. But for some coaches, that's the dilemma.
Here's how I measure that. What you say and what you do has to align with who we are. Yeah. And so it's an easy way to find an imposter in your program.
Yep, 100%.
What they say and do doesn't align with who we are. But let's even backtrack it more as a coach. If you don't know who you are or what your program is or is about, then you're just going to be fooled at every turn. Yeah. So you better know, and you better be content cold, right? You better know your shit. And
but I don't even think coaches are fooled. Honestly, I think they know. I think they sit in their office at the end of the day as the head coach and go, I know this guy could cause us some problems this year. I'm just hoping he doesn't. I think we try to fool ourselves because we see talent. I think we try that. Yeah.
But our job is not to just write kids off. Like,
yes, 100%.
I always say it's so hard. Like, we're not here in the business of just judging and writing people off. We're trying to. Our goal is in a team sport is to create the best team. Yeah. So if you can have the best team, you have a higher chance of overachieving and winning more games. But we are all going to have a little bit of naivety and have a little bit of an ego when it comes to, like, maybe this kid, maybe our culture can transform you. Maybe what we do in our program can help this kid. And so we're going to give them every last possible chance to do it.
100%.
But players will tell on themselves, right? Players will always tell on themselves, just like coaches will. And I'll say this, and this is not just anything about play, it's about both sides. The players know if you don't. It's one of my favorite Jeff Linder phrases, is players know if you don't. So if you don't know something about your program or your style of play or your offense, the players are going to know right away because they're like, damn, he doesn't really know what he's doing. Players know if you don't. So you better be very, very content cold in everything that you do. But back to your point, is that, we're gonna sit there and say, come on, man, just a little bit of growth. We just want to see a little bit of growth every day. But when that growth stops and all of a sudden the detracting starts, usually players telling themselves, and Coach Meyer used to say, the players will cut themselves. They'll do something that is detrimental to themselves, which in turn is detrimental to the program. And at that point, the decision's made. And it's just hard because we're such a transfer-oriented culture. I call it the portal pandemic. Like we have a real pandemic going on, but in college basketball, the portal pandemic's real. I mean, 3 years ago, it was 720 kids in the portal, average of 2 kids leaving per year per team at the Division I level, just alone. Now you're over 1,000 this year, and now there's no real rules or regulations on how or why you can get to the portal or any of the stuff. It's just, hey, I can just go hang out in the portal, meet you in the portal. It's a portal pandemic, so we just know that if you don't recruit to who you are and what you want from a player, and sometimes that means taking less talented players that believe in you and what you do more, and it's just that leap of growth, man, they close that growth gap so fast because of their belief and their understanding of who they are and what they want out of their life, versus just saying, what can this person do for me? What can, versus saying, hey, what can you do for me? How can you help me? How can you help me? Versus saying, how can I help myself? How can I help this program? This is a great fit. I mean, it's just there's a lot of stuff here to unpack.
No, it's fantastic stuff. Like I said, man, I mean, me and you, we could probably sit and talk for hours about this stuff, and I love it. We'll have to stay in touch. Like, Coach, I promise I won't bug you too much, but we'll have to stay in touch after this because I love seeing it. I love hearing it. I love learning about it. The desire to want to get better is fantastic. So you're hitting it. It is what it is. The kids, we have to teach them the why, and that's going to help us get to that. I mean, you're marking up about everything that a coach would ever want to hear on a podcast. I mean, about culture, you're kind of hitting every little piece of it. And the thing I love is you're giving me gold for sports psych. So when I publish it, when I turn it in for the assignment, it's already there. Like you talked about flow in the first 2 seconds of the podcast. You know what I mean? Like all of my research is done. I just got to go talk about it, So I love what you guys are doing. Go ahead, Coach.
Let's just also dispel this myth, I believe, too, which is great cultures are just winning programs. Yeah, it's not true. Just because you win doesn't mean you have a great culture. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of times we study the programs that all of a sudden we started winning. So we're like, whoa, they're winning. How did they do this? And then they're like, you're so intrigued by it. But what you miss are the steps that are leading up to that, which are what I call, it's just a simple phrase. I call it celebrate the singles. Mm-hmm. When teams are already winning, they're hitting home runs now. Texas Tech, right? They're they're winning at a high level. They're all of a sudden you're like, wow, they're hitting a lot of home runs, and now they're nationally televised, and they got all the good stuff going for them. Yeah. And I say nationally televised, like they're must-watch television, right? Yeah. And so before that, though, you have to have those quiet moments where you're celebrating the singles. And there's a question you asked about how do you know when you're getting your culture to a point where you're starting to see it's on the right path. And for us, when we were at Missouri Western, we had a lot of things we wanted to change. You know, Josh Looney, I love the man. It's 3 C's. He talked about you want to show success in the classroom, on the court, and in the community. Well, they hadn't won a lot. So you're not going to change winning overnight. Their classroom hadn't been the greatest graduation rate, classroom GPA, and in the community, they just hadn't seen the players out in the community. So what can we control? Well, we could control how much our players go out in the community.
Yeah.
We have 17 players in a roster. They're supposed to get an average of 10 hours. That's 170 community service hours. We got 340 in the first year. So all of a sudden, we're building a lot of credibility with the community. Our GPA slowly progressed to where we, you know, before we left to University of Wyoming, our team GPA was a 3.26, which was massively different than what it was under 3.0, to the highest, you know, men's program in the athletic department at 3.26. Guys were getting GPAs that they'd never gotten before in their entire college careers. Those we call them culture wins. So we're celebrating those singles. I mean, I remember we're on the road we're at Illinois Springfield, and our grade reports come out, and we're sitting there watching film, and I just started reading off GPAs because I was so pumped up. And dudes just started getting up, they're pumped, they're clapping, they're freaking going crazy. Like they're hugging guys that never got a 3.0 before.
Yeah.
And like for us, that was as important as winning a basketball game.
Yeah.
It was just as important. And we were, at the time, we were 4-8.
Yeah.
We were 4-8 at the time last year. And it was like, you know what? You wouldn't know if you walked in and saw this. And then we end up going on a streak where, you know, all those little things from community service to classroom. And now all of a sudden the court starts playing, and we have the longest home win streak in 17 years. We have 11. You know, we get our most home wins in 14 years, 12. We get our longest win streak in 18 years, 7. You know, you get our most MIAA wins in 18 years at 13. And so people notice that at the end. They're like, wow, what a great season. But they didn't see all those little singles, you know, those base hits where we were just sacrifice bunting guys to get them over to second, you know, put them in scoring position. And here we are. That's the process of all this that's exciting.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that people miss. I mean, coaches want to get to the culture piece and get to the winning piece. They need to understand we got to hit singles too. And I think that's a huge thing. When I was up in Tacoma, Washington at PLU, where I still work as an advisor, that's what we talked about. Base hits. Guys need base hits every day, you know, and we bring in 1 or 2 good recruiting classes. And I mean, at the Division III level, that changes the program, which is different, you know, than some schools. But you're right. Base hits are the way to go. Getting guys pumped up about those other pieces that don't have to do with the success of basketball. And I preach this because I talk sports psych with people outside of basketball. I do baseball, football, track, anything, any sports. Let's just be honest about it. Sports is a failure thing. It's failure like crazy. If you get into the business of sports, you're going to fail a lot. So how do you deal with that? And how do you teach young men to accept the failure and believe in the process instead? It's hard.
You got it, but you also have to talk about it and bring it to light, right? And not give power to it. And this is they're just the real fierce conversations. And you can't be afraid of them. We talk a ton because I just know getting to a point where if you take over a program that's lost, you will have players when you take it over. And this is what I believe. And I love Coach McKenzie. He talks about, you know, just flushing it all out and getting what you want. But we took over a program and I didn't kick anybody off at Missouri Western. But what I told them what I was going to do is I was going to give them the choice if they wanted to leave, because I know that their dream wasn't to play for me. They had signed with another coach, and I respect that. But I told them exactly what was going to happen. And I said, you could have the choice. The power's in your hands right now.
Mm-hmm.
But when you decide if you're going to stay, just know that we are going to force you to fail at a level that you didn't know existed. Because a lot of times what happens is the fear of failure will stop players from even actually giving a lot of effort.
Yep.
So the first thing we're going to focus on is just giving the right effort all the time. And then really crash that to the point of that effort is going to induce and force failure, because we want you living out of that learned helplessness zone that happened for losing for 2 years. Where players say, I just want to stay back here. I just want to hide a little bit.
It's comfortable.
We're just not going to let you hide. So we're going to force that failure. But we're going to talk about how much we want you to fail. And we're not going to rip you or reprimand you for failing unless your effort isn't right.
Yeah.
And if you're going to fail and you're just going to kind of fail because you're lazy or lethargic or casual or cool, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to fail because of your effort and because of how hard you went, how violent your movements were, whatever we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And to us, when we talk about that a lot, it was like almost it became a source of pride for us, a point of pride where we saw guys going so hard, like they start clapping for them if guys screwed up. Like, get back in the drill. Let's go. Good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Versus like, if you were cool, you just weren't going to make it, man. You weren't going to cut it. Like that stuff wasn't going to fly. And you were going to get held accountable for that. So
that's great.
Yeah. To your point, I mean, I think too many times when you can get caught up in winning, right? And if you just say it's all process, it's all product based and, win. Well, you judge yourself on such a massive outcome that the emotions are going to swing so far from, oh, we won or we lost. The locker room's happy after a win. It's so sad after a loss. Coach is happy after a win. We're so sad at a loss. Like we lost a lot. We lost a lot of games my first year at Missouri Western. We doubled up in wins, but we still weren't over 500.
Yep.
And so, but I was going back into the locker room after wins. And if we did what we were supposed to do and still lost, when we lost 6 games by 2 possessions or less, that was me as a coach. I took those. I told our players, you guys did everything you could. I could have done better. I can't help us lose games by not being, a first-year head coach and not knowing what to do on the sidelines in those situations. So went back, talk about culture, went back all summer, took those 6 games that we lost by 2 possessions left, rewatched every single possession, learned where I could micro manage a game better and learned where I could macro expand just my not being so, I would say probably a little bit too energetic towards the officials in year one.
Yep.
And they let me know it too. Officials have egos, right? They let me know it too. Yep. And then just relax and control what I could control and not the officials and stay focused on the game. And then we ended up winning, 5 or 6 games by a couple, 2 possessions, 3 possessions or less, flipping that. That's the difference between 13 and 18 and 18 and 14. It's just that ability to seek growth and get out of your comfort zone and really analyze where you could grow as a player, as a coach. And so now once again, you're back to a Jeff Linder model of just focusing on the process of becoming better every single day.
Yeah. No, that stuff is those are gems for any coach out there, anybody. And something I do want to clarify. So Coach McKenzie didn't just clean it out. Like I said, I said that, but like the players cut themselves. And that's something he told me. Players cut themselves. When I show up and the GPAs aren't where they are and I give them a deadline and they don't get there, that's what it is. So, I don't want to make him seem ruthless. He didn't just clean out the whole place, but guys cut themselves by just not being there, not being accountable. But dude, you're on it. Coaches, that's gold. Growth, being able to want to grow, realizing we don't know everything. And I'd say most coaches deep down, we're insecure, man. We need to be validated. We need our wives to be strong. We need our players, our assistant coaches. Like sometimes we can be fragile people. We just are. And it's a lot of failure that we deal with and we burden it because we see it more maybe than the players do sometimes. So I like the fact that you're creating ownership for failures, that it's good. Let's do it. I told you about Graham Betchard. That's what he said. He goes, I told dudes, play like your hair is on fire. He coached out in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and he just said, or Oakland, and he just said, hey, guys, if you play super hard, I'm cool with it. Let's just forget about failing at anything and just go get it. And I didn't get into his philosophy a lot, but dude, I love that model of go play hard. Now, listen, once you get to a certain level of coaching, playing hard is what everybody should do. So you have to have more than just being able to play hard. But I think it's a really good model to start with is play super hard, expect to fail, keep going, get up, do it again. But when you get to that certain level of coaching, I think that we obviously need players that can make some shots too, which is aside from it.
So, well, okay, and let's probably dispel one more myth here, right?
Let's do it.
I love dispelling myths of culture. The myth that culture takes time. So we've already talked about the myth of culture is not just something you put on a wall, right?
Yep.
The myth that culture takes time.
Yeah.
Now, real culture, you'll know through the test of time, but culture does not take time. It takes belief. And I think it's so important that we understand the power of belief. You just talked about words of affirmation, from loved ones to us. It's the same. You can breathe life into players. You can breathe life into a program. You can breathe life into a culture. You can speak it into existence. And then you have to go out there and actively pursue it actively pursue that excellence every day. But culture does not take time. It takes time. It takes massive belief at an urgent level. And if you are urgent every single day, leadership starts at the top, right? The belief process and the culture creation starts in the mind of those that believe the most, right? If you are urgent every single day, if you are fighting for your culture every day and players start believing, and I always say that the greatest compliment you can get is when you walk in, you start talking to your players and they start talking like you. They start saying the things that you say. We quiz our guys every single day on just kind of our coverages and the reads and out of our ball screen motion. And when they could start saying, what are your 3 reads out of a blitz on a side ball screen corner fill? And they start going, oh, it's a spray roll, spray skip, spray kick. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Now that they start talking like that, now it's working. But it takes belief at a high level, not buy-in. Because at the end of the day, a player could just sit there and say, well, okay, I kind of like you right now. I'm going to buy into you today.
Yeah.
And then you get on them. And then tomorrow they show up to practice and they're like, I'm selling out today because I don't really like how you talked to me yesterday.
Yeah.
Or, I don't like this offensive set we just put in. It's not for me. This doesn't fit my style of play. So I'm selling out today. But when they believe at a faster level, and that's how we could flip something at Missouri Western in 2 years. We had doubled it in win totals in the first year, which is massive growth.
Mm-hmm. But
it's not just to double. It's to get to a winning season, trying to get 20-plus wins, playing postseason, right? Win championships. That's the whole goal here that we're trying to do. We're not trying to achieve mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that belief in what you're doing, all of a sudden these results that you work for, not wish for, right? The results that you work for start showing up. And I go back to what I call it our elevation season in 2018 or 2019-20 for Missouri Western, where you can just go down the list of everything that we accomplished that had not been done in almost 20 years, 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's how fast it can flip if you fight every day. But so the belief that culture, it takes a recruiting class, it takes 4 years. It takes you getting your guys in there. Why? It takes you getting the guys that are there to achieve or overachieve their potential, at least get to their potential and then overachieve, right?
Yeah.
And then to do that in different areas you talk about all the time, the classroom, the court, the community, socially, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, however you want to do it, elevate ourselves to a higher level of consciousness and understanding, man, but that takes massive intent. It takes being intentional every single day.
Yeah.
And before we get out of here, because I got to get to some film stuff here, but you asked one question that I thought was, I coached a theory of coaching basketball class, and I called it basically a theory of coaching basketball and creating culture class to students at Missouri Western.
Yep.
And Coach Meyer did it all the time in Northern States, part of the Division II live stream teaching a class too.
Yep.
And I loved it because he didn't waste that class. Like we weren't wasting that class. We wanted to, maybe there's a future coach in there. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you asked if you were hosting this podcast, who would you reach out to?
Yeah.
And I've always, at the start of every class I did, I would take 3 YouTube clips and I'd show a clip of Nick Saban.
Okay.
I'd show a clip of PJ Fleck and I'd show a clip of Dabo Sweeney.
Okay.
And I would say, tell me about these 3 men, their leadership styles. And I think culture, and this is and what's crazy about it is when I look at Jeff Linder's, what I call his culture cycle, he has juice in there, which I'm a bring your own juice guy. I'm big on that, but he's had juice in there, which is energy level. You got to have great juice every single day.
Yep.
He has discipline and effort in there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the one thing that I have in my personal philosophy is I have the word love in there, but I believe that Nick Saban is probably the highest form of discipline and process out there.
Yep.
I would agree. PJ Fleck is the highest form of juice out there. Yep. And I believe that Dabo in the football coaching world is the highest form of love and effort, getting his guys to play super hard and loving each other.
Yeah.
And that's all part of their cultures. But those are, I would just love to just see what happens in a room if those 3 dudes sat down and talked. It'd be like one of my dream things to watch was just these 3 cats all answer the same question in massively different ways. Yeah. But also have similarities. And one thing that these 3 do, they have high levels of success, but they also are very process-based. but the core of who I believe they are, just from studying them, is completely different.
Yeah.
And that would be my dream podcast for you. Like,
no, I appreciate you saying that. I've always thought that exactly what you said. Like, I resonated with exactly your take on those guys. If you're mentioning Nick Saban, I'm saying, yep, discipline, hard work, process. Fleck, I'm saying juice, energy. I mean, that's my guy. I'm in Minnesota now. That's my when he did his first press conference for us and took the job, it made me want to come to graduate school at the U because I wanted to be a Gopher. Now, I grew up here and I wanted to go there eventually, but it made me want to leave my graduate program and go to the U of M because of him. Just to say I was a part of what he did, to say that I watched him build it, right? Now I got to do it from afar. That's fine. And then obviously Dabo's my guy, man. I'm a faith guy. I love what he does. I think he's authentic as far as I can tell from the outside. I know he's had hiccups in the past, but like, I'm with you. I agree on all those things. Love, 100%. Yeah, dude, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you talking to me, spending some time with us. Me and you will have to have many more conversations. Love to maybe, if it works out somehow, we can get to a practice. Some of the guys on the staff out here at Concordia, maybe we'll get to practice somehow. I don't know. So it's a long ways away. I actually was driving through Montana and I was thinking, man, I should take a detour. I should just call Coach out of the blue, take a detour, go see practice.
It ain't an easy place to get to, brother. It's Laradise, all right?
Yeah. No. Laradise, is that what you called it?
Yeah, it's Laradise, baby. It's paradise and Laradise.
That's fantastic. I think one last thing I wanted to ask you. Well, I got two quick, and let's make it quick because I know you got to go. Tell me about your foxhole. I know you did the exercise. Tell me who was in it, and tell me, have you done it with your teams?
Coach Meyer always had us do this.
Well, I know you did it. I just want to know.
Yeah, not at the start of every year, but like after a couple weeks of practice, because that's when it's one thing to have a guy like you said. Coach Meyer goes, you'd always have a guy that you'd rather go duck hunting with or play video games with. A foxhole is somebody who in the three spots. At the front of the foxhole, you got to have a guy who's got your back.
Yep.
You got to have your right hand man, and you got to have a guy who's got your blind spot on the left side.
Yep.
3 for the guy in the back who's got your back. 1 for the right hand man and 2 for the blind spot. And it's like and I always say this, I preface this, your foxhole can change. Based on like your family's your foxhole, right? Like you have your family, like you got your family foxhole, you got your coaching foxhole, you have your friendship foxhole,
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you want people, you're always the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you want to, and I one rule I live by is never be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
You're done at that point. So surround yourself with people who are a lot smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like this, I just talk way too much because, it's me and you, but if there's a bunch of other people around, like I'm just probably going to shut up and take notes because I'm not that smart. I work really hard, but I'm just not that smart.
Yeah.
And so my personal foxhole, if I were just going to give a foxhole right now, I would throw Steve Smiley, who was my point guard, best friend growing up, in college, played for Coach Meyer. I'd throw Steve Smiley up. He's got my back. I'd put Luke Wicks, my brother, on the left. I mean, he's got my blind spots. He's always exposing my blind spots. And I put my friend Will Martin, and it would probably be, there's a lot. I put him and Houston Reed just sitting right there on the right hand man. Those two dudes all those guys would do the proverbial take a bullet for you. And it's hard to say that because there's so many guys that, got a lot of guys stand up my wedding like, Xavier Silas, Tony Birmingham, Dustin Yama, Nick Schroeder. I mean, there's just so many guys where you're sitting there saying, my foxhole, I'm pretty lucky. My foxhole's expanded in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
We're having a lot of great human beings in my life. So.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate it. And last piece that I want to give you a chance to do before you leave, because I know this is part of who you are. Who do you want to thank, man? Who do you want to say thank you to? And I know, listen, I'm going to be honest. I know there's family. I know there's parents. I know there's all that stuff. We know you're going to thank the wife. We're going to thank family, but who do you want to thank? Who helped you as far as coaching, everything else?
I go down this list almost every day. And this list is all the coaches and the people that like gave me massive belief.
Mm-hmm.
I was a skinny kid from Gillette, Wyoming that has no business being where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And people just gave me a high level belief, and probably the phrase that Coach Meyer used to say is you have to meet somebody who expects excellence from you at some point in your life. And I started meeting these guys, when I was from my dad, Mark Wicks, to when I was playing for the Gillette Bulls with Monty Wilkins, to my 7th grade coach in Gary Seneff, to my 8th grade coach in Harlan Holte, to my 9th grade coach in Jim Henshaw, who was really a formidable guy in my life, to my high school coaches in Roger Larson, Tor Gunnarsson, and Mike Curry, who just established that foundation of culture, really helped me see what it meant to be, a camel and to live to a higher standard. And then to your college coach, Don Meyer, and Coach Sather, who is still very influential in my life, but also recruited by him and play and coach with him now. And then Ricardo Patton, who gave me my first Division I coaching job, to Rex Walters, who taught me the art of analytics and being analytical and very critical on everything that you do, to Josh Looney, who hired me as the athletic director at Missouri Western, to Jeff Linder now, who's given me a dream opportunity to come back to my home state, which is freaking awesome. Yeah. And then Torbjörn Gedeke, my overseas coach in Sweden, who's probably one of the toughest, craziest guys I've ever met. And I love
What'd you say his name was?
Torbjörn Gedeke. In the Swedish realms, man, he is probably like, he's the Bill Lambier of Swedish basketball.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that dude's a monster. And I love that guy. So as we're talking about culture and coaching, I mean, those are the guys. I mean, that's the list. I remember every single one of them, man. I remember every single one of them.
And I mean, we're going to end on this, but dude, that speaks to who you are. The fact you can rattle off everybody's names, every place, every time, it means you put thought into it, because as we get older, we don't remember those things as easily. So
we don't.
It shows your humility, man. It shows that you're humble about it. And I appreciate you. Thank you, Coach, for coming on. Let's stay in touch, and then I'm excited to watch what Wyoming basketball does this year. So,
Ritter, you're gold, brother. Holler at me anytime, okay?
Hey, yep, I'll send you the link when I get it. All right, Coach.
Okay.
When I edit the film, take it easy.
Thanks, bro. Later.
So, on today's podcast, we got to hear from Coach Wicks. Got to hear about some of the unique perspectives that they're approaching up at Wyoming, and some of the things that he did at Missouri Western. He gave us a ton of content for sports psychologists, mental skills practitioners out there. There's a ton of content here. I don't even have to, it's so blatantly obvious that he's in love with sports psychology and believes in the mental side of the game that I don't even have to get into theory or anything like that with you. We're going to keep it pretty straightforward today. I had 3 key takeaways that I want to share with you all. And the number one thing that I heard from him is a deeper connection to your why in your program. This is what we do as mental skills coaches. We try to connect athletes with the why behind what they do, because we believe that that's going to motivate them, keep them moving forward, help them play better, be an authentic person. So connecting your coaching staff, yourself being connected to a deeper why, connecting your players to their why. He talked about a little of his time at Northern State, and Don Meyer was a hard coach, but he connected his players to his why. So for these guys, everybody involved with your program needs to have that why. They need to believe in your why as a coach. And I think for the mental skills practitioners out there, people who may be watching this thinking, how do we do that? You know how to connect people to their why. We get them to do some introflexion. We do some self-reflection with the team. We get them to speak about what really matters to them and who they are as a person. And with that, the athletic endeavors will follow. And they're going to follow that leader and that coach. So if you're working with coaches who are working on culture, the why in the program is so huge. Second thing I kind of want to talk about is that he mentioned, he goes, culture is just repeated actions of excellence. Pretty straightforward. I mean, habit tracking, goal setting, everything that you do in your culture, every decision you make is repeated actions of excellence. If you can get people and get athletes and get coaching staffs to understand, all they have to do is repeatedly do actions of excellence, right? Now, in each sport, it's going to be different. Excellence could look different in hockey than it does in basketball, different in football, obviously, than baseball. So just knowing that you're going to have to work and have flexibility with what excellence is. Have those coaches define what excellence is. Have those players define what excellence means. And then we can walk them through it. How do they achieve that on a daily basis? How do they achieve that on a weekly basis, on a monthly? And then how that will transform the program. Something that Coach Wicks talked about in this podcast that I think is extremely is awesome is that culture crusaders, right? You're going to have one or two guys on each team that are culture crusaders that are going to back the culture of the coach. Are those players your leaders, or are those guys that aren't playing? Who are they? And that matters. So how do we get people to believe in us and our why? Going back to number one. And then the last piece that I kind of want to talk about today, as far as mental skills goes, win the one. He said it, win the one. That's what they're doing at Wyoming. And that's what his coach is about. His coach doesn't like the word culture, but his head coach, but they're building culture. They're doing it. He doesn't like the idea of it, the fantasy that culture just comes out of thin air, that it's magical words on the wall, right? You have to do it. What you do daily, repeated habits of excellence, right? And your why and your purpose behind what you do gets you to your culture, right? So win the one is what they're doing at the University of Wyoming. And that's fantastic. That's fantastic for everybody involved in basketball. I mean, if you're looking to build culture, focus on winning the one. And what that means is winning the thing right in front of you right now in this moment. Don't go any further. We're not trying to win tomorrow. We can't win yesterday if we lost already. So we need to win right now in this moment. Somebody to refer back to on that, if you're a mental skills guy or coach, is Graham Betchert. Graham Betchert works with NBA players. His deal is play present. Play in this moment right now. One of the best philosophies, one of the best cultures as far as teaching the game of basketball in the mental side that I've ever seen. Graham, awesome guy. But Coach Wicks here is just reinforcing what I've known and what I'm learning throughout these podcasts is winning right now. And it's not winning, it's achieving, attaining, accomplishing this goal in this moment. So just let me clarify that. Ways that we can do that. Mindfulness is a huge way. Focus, breathing, attention control, things that we know how to do as mental skills practitioners. We know how to teach. Now we have to get basketball players to buy in and coaches to believe that winning the one repeatedly will lead them to a culture of success, culture of winning, because that's at that level of college basketball, winning matters. But a huge thing is going to be teaching players what they can control, what they can't. Get rid of what they can't control. I know this is cliche, control the controllables. I get it. But teaching them about what things in the game of basketball or football or baseball or whatever sport you're working with, they can control, and then just pushing the rest aside. So just want to thank you all for tuning in for this episode of Conversations on Culture. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to hearing from you all about who you want to hear on the podcast, who you want to hear from on the podcast, who you want to have on it. There's going to be a YouTube channel, so I'll put up Coach Wicks' bio in there if you guys all want to see what his background is in. But hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in.